This meeting of the Reading Municipal Light Department RMLD Board of Commissioners is being recorded via Zoom for distribution to the community television stations in Reading, North Reading, Wilmington, and Litchfield. The RMLD Board of Commissioners recognizes the importance of hearing public comment at the discretion of the chair. And on item, excuse me for a second, let me get this out of the way so I can get back to my view here. Back to me, sorry about that. The discretion of the chair on items on the official agenda as well as on items not on the official agenda. We ask that all questions or comments from the public be directed to the chair and that all parties, including members of the RMLD board, act in a professional and courteous manner when addressing the board or responding to comments. Once recognized by the chair, all persons addressing the board shall state their name and address prior to speaking. It is the role of the chair to maintain order in all public comment or ensuing discussion. Phil, would you be the board secretary, please?
Yes, I'm the secretary.
I know you are. I still have to, I feel like I have to ask you.
Okay.
For a public comment from the Citizens Advisory Board, George, would you care to make a comment?
Actually, Vivek is the one that's overseeing this meeting tonight. I just jumped in. I wanted to see how everything was going to go. Okay. I know that after you guys take your vote tonight, that's recommendations coming to the CAB. So we'll be looking at that, correct?
Well, we're not going to be taking a vote tonight. This is for discussion purposes only. We're hoping to take a vote and with a motion on our May meeting.
Okay, good. Yeah, no, so I just want to see how it's going to go, just off of some of my opinions. We've had a lot of information provided by different reports from the GMs, so I think I just want to be interested to see how it goes tonight.
Excellent. Vivek, would you care to comment?
Yeah, no, I think, you know, I like the fact that the Board of Commissioners are moving this matter forward and you want to bring closure to it. And I think you've had a lot of input. You got input from us even at the last meeting. So there's nothing new to add to that. It's good to just see, just from my perspective, the combined numbers above and below the line so that they get a complete picture. That's all.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
The liaisons, Karen or Vanessa, would you care to make a comment?
Hi, John. Thanks. Vanessa Alvarado here from the Select Board. John, I just wanted to say thank you for joining us at our meeting last night where we talked about the pavement. Nice to see familiar faces there. Thanks for coming.
It was my pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me. I very much enjoyed the meeting and hearing from most of the meeting about all the COVID-19 responses from the town and from the state. It was very, very impressive. If there's any public comment, I don't know that we have anyone from the public on site. If not, we'll move forward. The intent of the meeting tonight was really to discuss the proposed approach. And let me just give just a little bit of background quickly. And we've been using a prior methodology, as we all know, using the CPI. It had been used for many years. We just felt it was no longer appropriate. We'll talk about why in just a minute. But basically, as kilowatt hour consumption had been declining due to many factors, including milder weather, use of energy saving devices, more efficient computers, LEDs, et cetera. And at the same time, the RMLD has fixed costs, which are increasing. And for us, we had to do something to be able to continue to provide the outstanding maintenance and service to our 4 towns. In addition, over the past few years, we found that the maintenance of the electrical system required significant new investment in capital, transformers, rewiring circuits, additional metering, updating of equipment, basically items that hadn't been addressed for a long time, including the need for a new, very expensive substation. Thus, declining revenue, increased costs, and a formula that continually increased the payment to the town of Reading, irrespective of external conditions, just didn't make sense anymore. So the RMLD Board of Commissioners has been wrestling with how best to meet the needs of our various constituencies, including all of our customers in all 4 towns we serve, represented by the Citizens Advisory Board, the town of Reading itself, and the staff and employees of the RMLD. we've examined and presented multiple approaches as to how to meet diverse requests, and I believe we're very close. And I hope that with the methodology we're going to talk about tonight, this will accomplish it. We've tried to keep our compromises to a minimum, but as I mentioned before, in my professional career of 40 plus years, I've usually found that the best approach requires compromise for the better good of the enterprise. So that being said, what I'd like to do is, if Wendy could perhaps, there's two items that we're going to discuss. One is the we would propose to extend the payment that's due to, the last payment's due to stop in our present motion on 7/31/2021. And the proposal is to move that to the last payment to an additional payment to 12/31/2021, so that the town of Reading basically picks up another 6-month window, as well as brings everybody on to the same current year. Could we have is there any discussion about doing that? Or?
That makes a lot of sense. So basically go to the calendar. So any calculations going forward about the payment to the town will be on a calendar year basis, John? That's what you're saying?
Correct.
Seems to make sense.
Colleen, any comment? Oh, you got your mute on, Colleen.
No, I don't have any comment.
Okay. Anyone else? Yeah, that's the first piece of what we're proposing. The second piece is what you see on the screen here. And the approach that we're proposing is really using kilowatt hour consumption as the purest form of measurement. In other words, it's not revenue, it's not cost of goods sold, it's not of anything that could be changed or manipulated in any given way. It's basically the fundamental element from which all other of our financials are derived. And we track it down to the last kilowatt, probably minute, as opposed to hour. So it's a very pure thing to kind of look at, and we know exactly what it is and how it's being distributed amongst the 4 towns.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, please go ahead.
Could I just ask one question? Sorry, I was muted there. My question is, looking at the chart, I know, and it's a very simple question. We were looking at the mills there. It was 3.75, and now we've gone to 3.875. Not that, I mean, how did we determine that change? Do you know?
Go ahead.
Yeah, George, there had been 2 sets of numbers proposed back in March.
Yeah.
Was 3.75 and one was 4.
Right.
You see here is, rather than pick one or the other, is cut it down the middle. So yes, there had been a 3.75, but at the same time, there'd also been a 4 out there.
That was just my own information, please. Thanks. Okay.
So the approach that's being suggested here is that we take a three-year weighted average of kilowatt hour consumption and multiply it by this variable, the mils per kilowatt hour. And the 3-year rolling average is a technique that's used to modify any kind of disturbance to the system, if you will. If it were whether it's the COVID, whether it's a decrease in any given particular year, whether some untoward event happens, when you begin taking a 3-year average with some of these large numbers, you find that it gets smoothed out over time. And it can be smoothed out typically in either a positive way or a negative way, whichever way it happens. You don't feel the full impact of it in any given year. And the reason we projected this chart tonight is to allow us to show you what could happen, what might happen if we were to change some of the variables in terms of moving forward. So if we focus in on, let's say, calendar year 20 on the above, in the very top chart, and calendar year 21, we see that the payment basically to the town is what it has been. It's 2.48 million and change, correct? Everyone see that? So this top chart says, well, if the kilowatt hour sales remain constant moving forward from CY calendar year 22 through calendar year 26, and there's no changes, what will happen as this ripples through and the effect of the 3.875 becomes felt, that in the 5th year, the payment would move up to 2.54 million. And the cumulative, if you look to the right where it says cumulative gain loss, this adds up the difference between what we were paying at 2.48 and through all the years up to 2.5. So the town would pick up over 5 years an additional $260,000. That's if everything remains stable.
It looks like, is that 300,000, John?
I'm sorry. Is it 300,000? I can't quite see it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 298. Thank you very much. Yes, my eyes are going along with everything else.
So John, just to clarify, this is us selling the same amount of electricity every year. This is what this is saying.
Yeah,
that's correct.
Mm-hmm.
So if
under that scenario,
in that scenario, the two scenarios on the bottom were formulated. We'll deal with the one on the left first to say, well, what if other things happened? For example, let's assume that that kilowatt hours increased by 1% per year. And so that's what this little multiplier is, that X equals -1. We can change that and it ripples through this entire chart. So if indeed we had a 1% increase as a function of economic development, let's say, across the various towns.
Or electric cars.
Or electric cars, absolutely. Perfect example. When and if electric cars start coming in, it's going to be a major factor in terms of our sales. And I need to stress, this is one of the variables that we don't really have a good handle on. The weather, we can't control that. We can't predict what that's going to be. So please don't use these charts as a predictor. Use it as this is what could happen if things fell in these kinds of tanks and where that might go. So again, if we had a plus 1% increase over these 5 years, the cumulative payment to the town over this time would be, if someone could read that for me, I can barely see it.
631,811.
Thank you. So there's the upside at a 1% increase. Let's try a 1% decrease, since everybody likes to go, what is it, sort of the rails, I think was the term that was used earlier. So a 1% decrease over those entire 5 years would be a loss to the town, cumulative, over 5 years of $127,000. Now that's on top of 2.48 million, right? So we're talking about approximately 5% over 5 years. Now I wish I could read into my own investments over that period of time and only get a 5% loss over 5 years when the COVID has knocked the socks out of the stock market in 1 year.
And John, one quick thing, you might be getting to this, but the other thing that'll be happening is we project that the above the line payment will be going up in all scenarios because of the capital investments that are being made. So all of these discussions are only about the below the line.
That's correct.
The line will be going up. So even if there's a loss on the below the line, if it happened, it appears that it will be more than compensated for in this scenario by the above the line.
Exactly right. We'll show the above the line in just a minute, but I wanted just to focus in on the below the line first, because that's the largest component and has the most variables. So we're all concerned about COVID-19, correct? And it's not just COVID-19, we had the mildest winter ever this last winter, which has a huge effect in terms of what happens to us at the RMLD and our payment to the town, as well as the electrification, the LED bulbs, et cetera, that are being used. So what we tried to do in this next chart on the right-hand side is to say in calendar year 20, that's this year, let's say we have an 8% drop. Terrible, right? We've been talking about 0.5% or 1% that we've been experiencing at most. Now, because of all these different factors, we're saying, let's make it 8%. And by the way, from that point moving forward, in calendar year 21, we're back to business as usual. That's not, an 8% is not going to last. We've never seen it last in our history, anything that dire year over year. So we're going to get back, but we're going to still include a minus, or I would say, yes, a plus 1%. So we increase the economics of the town, et cetera. And you can see the cumulative number, which is what we should be focused on at the bottom of that chart. If someone could read that for me.
11,868.
Right. So if we have economic development, which increases this by 1%, and we still have an 8% drop in 2020, we make up for it over a 5-year period of time. And I would argue that $11,000 on top of 2.4 million is lost in the noise. We're basically business as usual. Now, if we would like to go dire, let's go to a minus 1% on this X factor. There we go. And if you would read that down below, it's a 200,000.
209,803.
So even with the COVID, weather, et cetera, 8% hit and a negative 1% per year over 5 years, it's a $200,000 hit. Again, on top of 2.4 million, only a 10% piece of that. That's as if absolutely everything goes wrong. And I don't think any of us here ever plan our future with everything going wrong over a 5-year period of time. Because what happens is you see it coming and you do something about it and you make some changes, right? You change your direction. You don't just sit there and wait for it to happen. So in any event, what I'm trying to show here is that I think we're in pretty good shape with this type of a rolling average, and with the numbers that we've used in terms of mils per kilowatt hour to kind of get to a place that people can feel comfortable about. Everyone's made compromises in pulling this kind of chart together. So with just that in mind, do we have any questions from anyone? This is an open discussion to deal with this, and then we'll move on to the above the line. If not, could we go to the above the line, Wendy?
Sorry, John, one quick question.
Sure, Bob.
The only thing is if has anybody asked, I understand your reasoning on the third chart that we looked at, the bottom numbers were different. The chart 2 and chart 3 had different sets of numbers. If those,
they did.
Yeah, so even if they were the same, there's only a minuscule difference between the two numbers. If you maintain the same numbers, I could see somebody asking that question. Why did you change the numbers from chart 2 to chart 3? If you had kept them the same, what did the number look like? And just rounding, I think you're only talking maybe $11,000, or maybe it's a minuscule number, right, if they were the same.
Well, Wendy, can we go back to those charts, please? And Bob, if I understand what you're saying, if we put 0 in where the X equals 0 on both of them?
Or no, it's actually, so if I was in the lower part of the chart 3, the third chart, right? We go to year 22, 23, 24, 5, 6.
Right.
Those numbers are slightly different. They showed the growth, right? Someone might, when we talk about that, if you look at it, if you just plug the numbers in from the chart on the left to the chart on the right, and I could see that being a question.
Yeah, this is actually the same chart. We've just duplicated the chart.
And you just changed the variable on the.
Yeah, the one on the left, we're saying, let's forget about COVID-19 and any pandemic or untoward event or a mild winter, super mild winter. Let's just deal with like economic development. It's a -1, +1, -0.05, +0.05, just to see what the impact would be if without the overlay of the major factors of a winter or pandemic or huge reduction in terms of energy usage. We repeated the chart on the right. It's actually the same number. It's in the calendar year 18, 19, 20, and 21. And then what we said was, let's layer in calendar year 20, this 8% hit for us. and then do the same thing. We can either increase economic development or decrease economic development. And the reason I did that was because I wanted you to see, without changing a large number of variables at one time. We're trying to keep it really pretty straightforward.
Yep.
And by the way, we'll send these out to anybody who requests them. So you can.
That's
you can
what
play with them.
John, this is Phil. I would like, I see this as a Excel spreadsheet. So if at some point somebody could email me the spreadsheet itself, I'd like to kind of play with it.
Oh,
with some
absolutely.
variables.
That's
Yeah.
exactly what we'd like to do. All right, anybody who would like to take this, play with it, put in various numbers, please feel free to do that. This is not a motion night. This is a discussion and trying to circulate this to get the best compromise moving forward.
Okay.
Yeah, the only comment, John, I would have is if we had a real bad emergency, somebody drops an atomic bomb on Reading, well, we're all gone anyway, but that's another story.
Yeah.
We won't need electricity if that happens.
Pick another metaphor, Phil.
Yeah,
Pick another
exactly.
example.
Yeah.
We have a major ice storm like they did out on Worcester.
There we go.
There we go.
There you go.
I feel safer now.
Yeah.
Well, when you get this, you can layer that in terms of what you think that might be. And I'm almost going to guarantee that this three-year rolling average is going to smooth that out in such a way that it's not going to impact it. You have to believe that we're going to come out of, on any given year, the ice storm's not going to last 2 years in a row or 3 years in a row. That's not the way it works. But seriously, I would like anyone to play with these. That's the reason we created them, so that you can see what the impact would be. And if you have suggestions about how we could mitigate any of those or change the formula, happy to consider them.
Can I ask a question about Phil's question?
Please go ahead.
Are you saying that if there's a bad ice storm, it reduces kilowatt hour sales for that year?
I think what would happen in a case like that would be that the system has to be all rebuilt at that point. And
But
that would potentially
kilowatt hours.
affect the bottom line. Yeah.
But that's different than kilowatt hour sales. The payment here is calculated by kilowatt hour sales, not by some,
Well, it would certainly, if the system were down, the kilowatts would be down, I would think.
I mean, but
The system wasn't
for a
working,
couple days, right? For a couple days, or a week or whatever.
Colleen, how long did it take them to rebuild out there in Worcester? Do you know? Do you remember?
No, Colleen, do you know, or when there's big ice storms, does it reduce annual kilowatt hour sales noticeably?
Usually you would take the other substations and triangulate the loads and recover if you lost a particular section. I mean, yeah, if you had areas of neighborhoods that were out for a long period of time, you'd lose those sales. But I mean, it was recovered within, I think, a couple of months or so. Do you remember, Bob, out in the 495 belt?
Yeah, from National Grid's perspective, when they hit a storm, if you look at it even from a week perspective, the amount of customers, your customer base dwindles, gets recovered every day that you're recovering during a storm event. And your biggest challenge is capital recovery,
Right.
Which is a different, that would end up being a surcharge on top of everybody's bill if that's
Right.
how it would come in. So it wouldn't affect kilowatt sales. You talk even like 2 days are like, when you think about it's 1/300th of the year per day.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Well, I'm curious what Phil, you're saying, are you worried, like, will RMLD, if there's a major event, would RMLD be able to afford to make the payment to the town? Is that what you're getting at, or?
That's what I'm getting at too. Yes. If there was a major event, I mean, will we have the funds available to be able to make the payment? That's my concern.
Well, here's the caveat on all these formulas. No matter what happens here, we are charged at the RMLD, separate from the town, to make sure that we can provide electricity to people no matter what happens. So the caveat on any of these formulas is If there's an untoward event that's large enough to actually get into that kind of territory, then the payment to the town is going to shrink, period. Doesn't make any difference if it's an atom bomb or an ice storm or whatever. We're certainly not going to be making payments to anybody if we have to rebuild the entire system. I mean, I'm stretching my imagination to think about how that could possibly happen. But rather than think about the most dire situation, I can only say that in that kind of a situation, all bets are off. That's embedded in the formulas. If we have to do that, then all payments to anybody are off. There might be payments above the line as well. If we need to do that, we are state mandated to provide electricity and keep the system operational.
I just have a quick question. On the flip side, on the positive side, like for each electric car that gets added, isn't that like adding a house or like adding 2 houses or something of that magnitude in terms of the amount of electricity that's being purchased? Something of that order?
Is it that much, Dave? It's like a house or 2 each car?
It's like I mean, I think my electric load is doubled.
Wow.
With something like that. Colleen, do you know? I mean,
Well, we talked about, making sure that when the electric vehicles, that's why we were trying to put that on a time of use rate. That's how we designed our rebate. Because when a car, like if you had a Tesla and you start that up, it can be equivalent to a number of houses.
right.
And we don't want the transformers to start going away. So
I get that. I'm asking a different question of what it does to sales. Like, is having another electric car on the system kind of like having another house built in terms of what that car is consuming every year, roughly?
I guess what I'm saying is it's intermittent, and I would have to probably put together a chart for you to answer your question.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you anecdotally at my house, our car has probably doubled our electricity use, all off peak, because that's when we charge it. So just in case anybody's wondering what 1 or 2 electric cars will do, I think it's going to be of the magnitude of adding another housing unit.
I think you're probably correct.
And it's in that general magnitude.
And Dave, thank you for being a true patriot to the RMLD.
Oh. I mean, this is in the future. I think we're going to see these. So,
okay, I agree.
Yep.
Any other discussion items? If not, could we move to the above the line, Wendy? Someone has a noisy mic on. If you would mute it, please. Thank you. The lower chart here is the above the line payment. And let's see, this is assuming that we maintain the kilowatt hour usage. Remember the way it's calculated above the line is it's 2% of net plant times the percentage that whatever community uses of the total kilowatt hour usage. And so you can see that the numbers here are indeed increasing, and it's a function of how much capital, of course, is put into the plant.
Right.
So our intent is to continue putting capital into the plant, and that would include all these transformers, all the maintenance, all the rewiring, all the meters, the substation, et cetera, as we move forward. And let's see, I don't think we have the chart here that says if there was an 8% hit in one of the years, what the difference would be, but I think it was calculated out as a $5,000 difference. So
why would it be a $5,000 difference, John? Because we'd have to rebuild and there'd be more capital to go in.
Correct.
This,
But
this thing was set by special legislation too. I want to make that point.
You're absolutely
right. This was set by special legislation from the state. You're above the line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a question of, I think it would be, and Colleen, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it would be a question of whether if we move any of the capital from one year to the next. That's all.
Okay. All right.
And it's looking at the 10-year plan, as you can see here. So the intent is not to do that. It's going to continue to rebuild the system, or not, well, build the system and maintain the system, obviously. So we felt that there really was no major impact in terms of the above the line payment. That would just get added to the below the line payment as it has been.
Looks like it continues to go up.
It does.
Consistently. Does the new substation in there, Colleen and Wendy? I'm trying to see, I don't see the big jump up in the net plant numbers. Is it averaged over some time, the substation?
Going? I'm gonna let her speak on that. It is though. It's in a 2 to 3 years.
Oh, it's averaged in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
It depends on the year.
Year.
And when the project starts.
Got it. Thanks.
Wendy's kind of hard to hear. What did you say?
Wendy, could you speak up, please? Thank you.
Sorry. It's in there over 2 to 3 years because it's based on the time of when the project starts and when it's planned to finish, because it is a lengthy project.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I expected to see some big, 8-figure number bump up in 1 year, but it's not like that.
No, because we also have projects going on with it, so it's going to take its time.
Okay, thanks.
And again, the sort of the rolling average is kind of a very nice methodology to sort of smooth out these kinds of things.
Yep.
Quite honestly, that's all we had to present tonight. And so if there are any other questions, we'd be happy to, if you'd like to comment, talk about this some more, that's great. But really it was to just get everyone onto the same page in one session, provide you with the documentation and the spreadsheets so you could do what if analysis on your own, and bring it to our May meeting where we can discuss it further. And I would hope that we could do a motion in the May meeting to get closure on the methodology.
John, this is Phil. I got one item that's come up, and that is the idea that there'd be some sort of ceiling and some sort of floor in terms of any increase and decrease. I think we should, discuss that at this point.
Sure.
As to whether or not it would be something we would consider or should be considering.
Well, let me deal with the ceiling first. The ceiling really implies that if, let's say electric cars came in 10 times faster than we ever expect, which could happen because Volkswagen's dumping internal combustion engines this year. If they came in and we started selling huge amounts of electricity, that means all towns would benefit. The kilowatt hour usage would increase dramatically. And why would the town of Reading want a ceiling on this? I mean, wouldn't everybody be, as the phrase I used last night was, dancing in the streets, if that would happen? I'd be happy. I think everybody would be happy.
Okay.
Right. As far as a cap or a basement, if you would, line, the rationale there would be, we don't want to be in a position, per your previous comment of an atom bomb or a huge ice storm occurring, Phil, to be locked into a legal payment to the town of Reading when we need to use all available funds to deal with whatever that catastrophe might be. And I have no idea what it could be, but we certainly don't want to be in a situation where we have attorneys coming over and going, you owe us this money, please pay it up immediately. And we're going, no, we're state mandated. We do not have to do that. And by the way, this is a voluntary payment below the line. I need to stress that to everyone, a voluntary payment.
But, to address
Phil,
that,
I'm
John,
curious. Go ahead. Go ahead, Phil.
To address that, John, let me go first, Dave. To address that, John, I mean, I think if we had a major event, I think in any motion that we determine that we put forward, we'd have to create some sort of policy to determine what's a major event, and that all bets are off, like you summarized from before.
Yes.
I mean, that would seem to be address that particular situation. I'm kind of leaning toward potentially some sort of floor involved.
Can I throw out something to respond to Phil?
Yes, go ahead.
Phil, what if we don't know? Hard to predict the future. What if something happens where people stop buying electric cars, and we've noticed over the last few years our kilowatt hour sales have dropped a little bit, 1-2%. looks like it's leveling, but who knows? What if it just kilowatt hour sales just continue to drop by 2-3% a year? And we've put a hard floor on this, and in 5-10 years, our sales are 80% on the dollar. Under that scenario, RMLD would be having to raise rates dramatically to compensate for a locked-in floor payment, or a floor payment, right?
Thank you, Dave. And let me make one additional comment on top of that. By statute, we're not allowed to use the other towns' rates to subsidize the below-the-line payment for Reading.
That's not, I don't know that it's quite like that.
Actually, it is. We sent out a memo today.
Okay.
That states that explicitly.
Okay, I didn't catch that.
I'm sorry. It was very.
Thanks for the correction. No, it's my bad.
Don, if I may.
Please, Vanessa, please go ahead.
Thank you. I mean, one of the great things I think that this discussion has demonstrated over the course of, the past year or two is that the select board and the commissioners are willing to work together. I think if we, to Phil's point, if a floor was set and something happened where RMLD was concerned about kilowatt hour sales, it is something that could be revisited in the future. It doesn't necessarily have to stay hard and fast. So that's an option as well.
Thank you. And let me remind everybody, there's no motion tonight. So if individuals would wish to bring these types of suggestions to our formal meeting in May, and we'll discuss it there and we'll take a vote on whether to include it or not. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we do.
John, one quick question on the chart on the net plant. As we're in calendar year 20 right now at 86 million. As the numbers grow up, are those in the capital plan? Where are those net plant numbers coming from? I know you said there's a substation built in there. And then
Colleen, will you care to answer that?
Yeah, Wendy's got the numbers. She can explain it. Is she there?
Okay. Everything you're seeing on your screen comes from our 6-year plan that is on the website. So
okay.
all the numbers here are directly from the 6-year plan and the strategic plan that management has decided.
Yeah, Bob, this plan, if I may, was developed a number of years ago when Colleen first came in, and we review that plan every year in terms of updating it, in terms of capital that's needed, et cetera. But again, happy to share that with you. It's about 15 pages wide. Yeah. I think it's a really, really good plan. We had not had that at the RMLD in any of the previous administrations.
So John, this is Vivek.
Yes, Vivek.
So I think to the point that Phil and I think Vanessa were talking about, if we are going to publish, or if RMLD is going to publish what the plan is, it provides visibility to the town planners as to what RMLD can do. It's the same thing like even setting a floor, right? I mean, if you set a floor or you provide guidance and saying, this is what we are planning to do. So that gives, from a planning point, it can give people a sense of what they can plan for. So, and I think one of the things that Vanessa, when I was talking to Bob and with the town manager, town administrator, I mean, he I think from a planning point of view, if there is visibility in the plan for the town, that's as good as giving a baseline, because you're saying under this scenario, this is what I'm going to do. And if things get bad, then we are saying, all bets are off anyway, right? There's always be that clause. So from a planning point of view, I think whatever RMLD comes out with is going to provide guidance for the next 6 years.
Yes, thank you, Viv. That's really good. That's exactly right. It's providing guidance. What it's not providing is a hard and fast number every year that's going to be paid. It's a formula that we use, no different than the formula we've used in the past. It's just a different formula. and that creates a variable number on any given year. It's a function of winter, COVID, all these other things that kind of work its way into it. So it's a variable number. Because we're running a business, we do not have stability, such as let's say the town has, in terms of how many houses there are and what the tax rate is for X number of years. That's not us. We are running a business that it changes every day.
I think the idea behind the floor, to Phil's point earlier, was yes. I mean, I think Vivek, your point is valid, that the transparency and the communication certainly is helpful from a town planning perspective. I think if we were to experience two significant decreases back to back, say a mild winter and say COVID-19, the 3-year average now would drop the payment a bit. But it may recover for RMLD in the following year, but the town would still be suffering that blow from that decrease. And I think that's where the guardrails that I had mentioned, as far as a minimum payment, helps insulate the town a little bit from that.
Okay. Any other comments?
I just have one quick one. Were you going to say something, Colleen?
Well, I was just going to ask John if I could speak to your comment earlier, Dave. I was thinking a little bit more. So if for the May meeting, so if an electric vehicle is 30 kilowatt hours for 100 miles, Chuck and I can put together an estimate of how many cars we think. I mean, they didn't come in this October as fast as we thought they would for the technology, but we could put together a chart that would show what we think the impact of electric vehicles on increasing sales could be over the next 6 years. And I can have that chart based on that for May meeting, if you'd like me to do that, John.
I think it would be instructive, sure.
Okay, I will work on that, but that's all I got, Dave. 30 kilowatt hours for 100 miles.
Yep, thank you. That you read my mind, because I was going to ask for that. So thanks for volunteering to do that.
Of course.
The only overall thing I was going to say is that the history is that we had CPI, and I think it started at 1.5 million and went up almost to 2.5 million over a period of, what has it been, 15 years of that formula. And I think it's just worth remembering that kind of $1 million increase is unique in the state and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And in terms of light plants, I don't think you'll find another one where the payment went up $1 million. And I think what this board has worked to do, and staff has worked to do, is how to preserve that high magnitude of the payment that enjoys, and make sure it stays there, but now tied to a formula that's more actually relates to what we're doing as a business. And we've worked very hard to do this, and thank you to staff and to my colleagues for your efforts. And that's kind of really the highest level of what we've tried to do here all along. And so these things we're talking about are tweaks around the margins, and they're good tweaks, but just want to make sure we keep in mind the overall, thing that we've tried to do here.
If I can make one other comment, and that's George and Vivek, could we,
yes.
I assume the CAB will be meeting prior to our May meeting. Is that correct?
Yes.
Would you be able to basically translate this what we've showed tonight, and in terms of the numbers and the impact, et cetera, and why we're doing it to the CAB, so that they have a good flavor for it?
I think we have a pretty good handle on it. I mean, Vivek also, I'm not going to speak for him, but we've been reviewing these as right along. This is nothing new to us. So we will be discussing it, I'm sure. Some of the other things we'll be talking about is the subcommittee and how often they should meet. I know it's 5 years now, but I don't think it should be any less than 3, more than 5. A few other things we'll discuss. Maybe this bottom line stuff, but yeah, we'll be discussing this at our next meeting.
Good, because we'd certainly like to have that for input.
And I'd like to, if you could provide some of that, if you just send over that spreadsheet to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd appreciate that. Vivek, go ahead. Sorry. I didn't
Yeah,
want
no,
to-
no, same here. I just would like to have the same spreadsheet and, I just look at all the numbers together, show the top the line, above
Absolutely.
the line, bottom line, below the line, and then just look at the composite. And so one can see what the numbers, the variable, yeah. Because one of my worry was, I think some of the calculations that had been done by the select board had used a slightly different formula for the above the line calculation. And so I think the above the line calculation should be done the way RMLD would do it.
I think this is the, I'd like to give kudos to the entire board and both the CAB and the Board of Commissioners, because I think, and Phil, you can comment on this, I think it's the first time we've had people on the boards who actually wanted the spreadsheets to play with them.
John, can I ask one more question? Other than Vanessa, has the Board of Selectmen seen this or got a hint of any of this? And have they given you any feedback or what their feelings are on it?
If I may.
So we actually reviewed this at our meeting last night. And I think there was, and we reviewed the previous proposals and the various incarnations for the formulas. And last night, I think there was a bit of concern as far as the lack of a floor for the reasons I mentioned earlier.
Mhm.
Otherwise, there was recognition of the collaborative effort between the commissioners and the select board. But yes, we have seen it. So thank you.
Okay.
Okay, if there are no more questions, could I get a motion for adjournment?
So move, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Phil? Oh, so move.
Seconded.
Second?
Yep, second.
Okay. Mr. Stempak, aye.
Mr.
Hennessy, aye.
Pacino, aye.
Mr. Talbot, aye.
Coulter, aye.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for discussing this. I very much appreciate it.
Thanks all.
Have a
Thank you.
Nice seeing you guys.
Yeah, bye.
Good night.
Be safe.